So regardless of where you are in the world, you should have the resources to verify the blockchain in real time. And ideally, all of our powers can unite and we can all work together to protect the integrity of the network. But because of this, we basically place artificial constraints on the network's resources, including CPU, storage, and bandwidth. And what we really end up with is a computer from the 1970s. It's slow and expensive and everyone has to share it. Just like baby Vitalik here. And clearly he's a baby in the computer from the 1990s, but that's probably still more powerful than Ethereum it is today. So does that mean we should just give up on scaling? You know, if decentralization is the most important property, then how can we scale the network? The flip side to this is, you know, one side of decentralization is, you know, what percentage of the world can verify the network, but also what percentage of the world can afford to use the network. If it's $400 per transaction, then users aren't going to validate the network because they can't afford to use it. So there is this dilemma between, you know, affordability and public verifiability. And so in this context, scalability is really trying to increase the transaction throughput while still keeping the same set of resources. That's sort of the goal for these layer 2 protocols. And so there's a third way, which is what we're going to talk about throughout this workshop, and they're called off-chain protocols. And the idea is really simple. You know, we take the assets that sit on a network like Ethereum, we move them to another network, and we just transact there. So we transact away from the main chain. And that's the basic principle behind it. So layer 2 protocols have always been here, and we've all been using them for about 10 years. So I guess I can't really see the audience, but, you know, raise your hand or you can leave a funny comment in the chat. Who's ever deposited coins into an exchange or an online service like Coinbase, Binance, or Bitstamp? If you have, then in a way, you've used an off-chain protocol, you know, in a way, because all the transactions occur on those websites and not on the underlying blockchain. The issue is that these services are fully custodial. You know, they can freeze, confiscate, and they can lose our funds. And they're also not auditable. You know, the database is private, they're opaque. Are they running a fraction of reserve? We have no idea. You know, do they still have my funds? Mt. Gox, you know, everyone's aware what happens there. So that's not the ideal outcome. You know, layer 2 is used every day, but they're custodial and high risk. Goon had this wonderful tweet from 2016, 33% of Bitcoin exchanges have been hacked. And when they get hacked, we know they're large scale. You know, Mt. Gox lost 850,000 Bitcoin. And in 2016, Bitfinex lost 120,000 Bitcoin, which today is an outrageous amount of money. So the goal is, you know, can we transact on a layer 2 system while still allowing users to have self-custody of their funds? So we can keep the properties of cryptocurrencies, but transact on another system. So let's find out. And clearly, based on, you know, the past 5 years of research, the first thing we would try to solve this problem with are payment channels. Can we throw payment channels at the problem and sort of, you know, build this off-chain system? So as a quick overview, a payment channel is that Bob puts in some money, Alice puts in some money, they lock it in a box. Then every time they do a transfer, one party signs it, they give it to the other party, they sign it, and they keep this local and private amongst themselves. And then at the end, they send one final transaction to the network. So it's a bit like this, a bit like a bead. You know, Bob sends a coin to Alice, Alice sends it back and forth like this. And that's basically how a payment channel works for the purpose of this talk. So if we want to build a payment channel hub that could replicate a Coinbase-like experience, then we have this non-custodial operator, and this operator has a big pot of money. And so let's look at a specific scenario. You know, Alice comes along, and Alice will open a channel with the operator, and the operator will lock 2 coins into the channel with Alice. Bob comes along, and then Bob will lock in 2 coins, and the operator will lock in 2 coins. Caroline comes along, and the operator doesn't like Caroline, so Caroline locks in 1 coin, but the operator doesn't lock in any coins. And finally, Dave comes along, and the operator really likes Dave, so he locks in 4 coins for Dave, and Dave doesn't put in any coins. So let's look at this scenario and see what the problems that may pop up. The first problem is Caroline can only send coins. She can't receive any coins in the network. You know, she has no inbound capacity. If she wants to receive coins, Well, she needs to get inbound capacity from someone. On the other hand, Alice can receive up to 2 coins at any time, but she can never receive more than 2 coins. So let's say, she places a bet and she wins $1 million in some lottery system, but also you can only get 2 coins and not 1 million. And what's her maximum inbound capacity. The other issue is that the operator has a hot wallet and he has a big pot of money that's now at risk. The other problem is opportunity cost. If he locks 4 coins in with Dave and Dave doesn't do any transactions, then the operator doesn't make any money. And so you may have to pay for the privilege to open a channel with the operator. And finally, this all requires, every new customer requires an on-chain transaction to join. That's a lot of traffic. So if you have 100 million customers, that's at least 100 million transactions on the network. And clearly that doesn't scale if you can only do 15 TPS. So payment channel hubs are great if you want instant finality and no trust. But the collateral lockup makes it pretty impractical for wallet providers and users. And so this is why we now have the rise of these custodial wallets like Strike, Blue Wallet, and even the El Salvador wallet. I think it's pronounced Severo. I can't really pronounce it. But they're all custodial, basically fintech. It's not necessarily crypto. And what's really happening under the hood, basically why are channels useful for? Why do we still describe these custodial wallets as Lightning? Is because Lightning is basically this interoperability solution that's connecting the wallets. So if I'm on Strike and I want to send funds to someone on Blue Wallet, I am using the Lightning network to do that. And Lightning's really this synchronization mechanism that will deduct the balance on Strike's database and increment the balance on Blue Wallet's database. And Strike's really this liquidity provider, and every wallet has their own liquidity provider who will basically provide you funds on the off-chain system as long as they get paid somewhere else. And that's basically why Lightning is really exciting for these wallets. But the question is, we're halfway there now. We have this interoperability solution, but again, they're for custodial and private database providers, and we don't really want that in the crypto world. So how can I build an off-chain system that has a public database? That was sort of the goal initially. Well, I'm not actually going to tell you how to build this off-chain system. Other people are going to tell you how to do that. What I'm going to mention is that the off-chain system doesn't actually really matter that much. What really matters is the bridge contract that takes your funds on Ethereum and unlocks funds on the other system, which we call the validating bridge. And that's what I'm going to talk about now. And it's a bit of a weird twist when you talk about layer 2 protocols. We're actually, building bridges and moving assets to another network, and we're all bridge engineers. What do I mean by this? Let's look at Coinbase, for example. There is technically a bridge, on Ethereum for Coinbase. And the bridge typically has, 3 different functions. It has a deposit function, a withdrawal function, and there's this update account balance. Coinbase will inform the bridge that Alice has 1,000 ETH and she's entitled to withdraw it. And then Alice can withdraw the coins from the bridge, at a conceptual level. So that sounds pretty cool, but then what is the general idea for these bridges? Well, the idea is that the other off-chain systems in this galaxy that we don't really care about that much. What matters is the trust assumption. How is the bridge convinced that Alice is entitled to withdraw funds from the system? What is Alice's new balance and why is she entitled to these funds? It ain't much, but it's all honest work, the farming meme. So the Coinbase example is a single authority, one ring to rule them all. We have other bridges, which are multi-authority, KFN, multi-sig. As long as 3 out of 4 parties agree, you can withdraw your funds. And then you have other ones that we can call crypto economic bridge. The idea is that the operators have skin in the game. If they allow a, nefarious withdrawal to occur, then they're going to lose their skin in the game and they're going to lose money. So they have a financial incentive for it to stay alive. But the issue of all these bridges is that we're still trusting a set of parties to protect our funds. The bridge contract is mostly blind to why they should be permitting these withdrawals. And so this is where the validating bridge comes in. And the very simple twist is that when you tell the bridge about a user's new balance, the bridge wants evidence for why that is true and why that is valid, cryptographic evidence. And that is basically what these networks, Optimism, Arbitrum, Starkware, Starknet, Aztec, they're all building bridges such that the bridge contract will, ensure that the off-chain systems will form correct. There's no invalid transactions, and all withdrawals are, they're entitled users, all withdrawals are valid. And so it looks a bit like this, the bridge contract's protecting you from this insane adversary. They try to censor you, they try to process invalid transactions, they try to withhold the database, and the validating bridge won't allow them to do that. That's sort of the end goal for these rollups. And so what we're really building is a layer 2 bridge where I can take my assets on Ethereum, move them to an off-chain system, but still keep the security of Ethereum. And that's sort of the goal for layer 2 protocols. And just at a high level, what this might look like, I call it a commit chain, a chain of cryptographic commitments. So you have a sequencer, you have the bridge contract, the blockchain, and this public database. Alice comes along, so you'll lock in one coin with the bridge contract, and now she can start transacting on the service. Bob comes along, hi Bob. Alice will sign a transaction, give it to the sequencer, and the sequencer can notify Bob that he will soon receive one coin. And then over time, the sequencer waits for more transactions, and eventually they pose a checkpoint to the bridge contract. This checkpoint should confirm the transaction and convince the bridge contract that this transaction was indeed valid. And then the bridge contract will only accept the checkpoint if everything is well formed and valid and all is good with the world. And it just does this periodically. So the sequencer is continuously convincing this bridge that its public database is valid and all state updates are valid. And then any user can get the transaction history from somewhere, look at the ground truth data, and recompute the layer 2 database themselves. And they can verify that all is well with the off-chain system. And so really the goal is there's this public database, and we're protecting the safety and liveness of it. Data availability is all the data publicly available so I can recompute the database. State integrity, are all the state updates to the database well formed and valid? And censorship resistance. If the sequencer goes offline, can a user still self-enforce a transaction and ensure that it's eventually executed? And that's basically what the bridge is checking, although I only made that slide last minute. So how cool is that? That's really cool. And so this is the new world of Web3. We're going to replace Coinbases and Bitstamps and all those custodial websites with new off-chain systems that prioritize this, users' self-custody and safety of their funds. And we're just building bridges. And of course, we'll have liquidity providers who will offer rapid transfers between these systems. And we're going to talk about that near the end. That's sort of like the Lightning Network and other repayment protocols. So I hope you enjoyed this talk. And I'm now going to let Ellie take over because I'm basically just out of time. So thank you guys for listening. And Ellie, you can just take over from here.